We're joined now by former Ramsey County prosecutor Susan Gertner to answer some of our legal questions about these cases. Thanks for being here, Susan.
Glad to be here.
So the judge is concerned with all of the pretrial publicity, worried it could taint a jury pool. Wondering what your take is on whether they can have an impartial trial here in Minneapolis and if the judge is likely to change the venue.
It's understandable that the judge is concerned about the pretrial publicity, and I don't think any observer would be surprised if there's a change of venue. This is an unusual case in the sense that, generally speaking, prosecutors are going to want to say as little as possible going into the trial. In other words, not trying their case in the press. But the dynamic here was that public officials were understandably wanting to tell the public more than they might have usually done because of the civil unrest, because of the community high sentiment around this case. So again, it's understandable why public officials probably said more than they might have if their only focus was on the criminal case. But that is what happened. Statements were made, and the judge changed his venue. It wouldn't be surprising.
So, a decision has to be made on whether to try the officers separately or together. What sort of impact could that decision have on the case?
Whether or not the four defendants are tried separately or together will have, I think, a critical impact on the outcome. That is going to be a difficult decision. The preference, of course, generally of the court is to try defendants together if the underlying case is the same, essentially, for multiple defendants. In this instance, though, that could cause real problems of fairness if all four of them are tried together. And so that will be a critical decision that the judge will have to make.
Susan, thank you for your insight.
Thank you.